Until today, you all must have heard about the big drug smugglers and drug cartels of Colombia and Mexico who created chaos all over the world. But today, I am going to tell you the story of such a smuggler who became the first black drug smuggler in American history. Along with being a drug smuggler, he later became a very big gangster who used to shoot people in broad daylight. At one point, he became so powerful that he was invited to America's biggest celebrity events. This smuggler became so famous that an entire Hollywood movie was made on him. But the movie showed many things that were far from the truth, which I'm going to reveal in today's story. The truth is dangerous and shocking. So what was the name of this smuggler? How did he carry out his smuggling? And how did he get caught by the police? This story will shake you. Frank Lucas was born on 9 September 1930 in North Carolina. He spent his childhood during the time when America was going through the Great Depression. It was a huge crisis that had engulfed all of America, leading to unemployment, bank failures, and extreme poverty, especially for African American families who relied on farming. By the time Frank was 6 years old, something happened to him that shook him completely. That incident turned his life from an ordinary boy into a smuggler and gangster. One day, Frank was sitting in his room when he suddenly heard loud screams coming from another part of the house. These screams were from his 12-year-old brother, who was crying for help. Hearing the screams, Frank immediately ran out of his room and reached the hall, where he saw a man with a gun. That man had placed the gun inside his brother's mouth. Before Frank could even react, a loud gunshot was heard. His brother's teeth fell to the ground, and he collapsed face first. There was such a large hole in his brother's head that a football could fit into it. He died instantly. The 5 white men who killed his brother did so just because he stared at a white girl. This was the era of racism, and black people were suffering throughout America. After watching his brother die so brutally in front of his eyes, something broke inside Frank. From that day, he decided to walk the path of crime. As Frank grew older, he started robbing drunk people and also began driving trucks. But when he got caught sleeping with the truck owner's daughter, he got into a fight with his boss and hit him on the head with a metal pipe. After knocking out his boss, he stole $400, 0 cents, from the cash register and set the entire place on fire. Because of this, his name began to be associated with various crimes in North Carolina. Frank's mother became extremely worried. She feared that either her son would land in jail or get killed. So she told Frank to go to New York. At the age of 16, Frank moved to Harlem, New York. But since he had already chosen the path of crime, he began his illegal activities there as well. He started by robbing jewelry stores, sometimes killing the shop owner, other times breaking the guard's jaw. That's when he realized he needed not just strength but also technology to commit bigger heists. He bought a gun and began robbing local bars and small gambling dens. During this time, he caught the attention of Harlem's underground mafia kingpin, Bumpy Johnson. Harlem was going through a rough time. Many homes didn't have electricity or water because rats had chewed through the pipes and wires. Unemployment and crime were at their peak, and many people sold white powder, cocaine, on the streets. The mastermind behind this entire racket was none other than Bumpy Johnson. According to the movie American Gangster, Frank was shown as Bumpy's right-hand man and driver. But the truth is a bit different. Bumpy Johnson's wife said that a criminal named Flash Walker was actually Bumpy's right-hand man. But 2 years before Bumpy died, Flash betrayed him, after which Frank became Bumpy's right-hand man. After Bumpy died, chaos erupted in Harlem. Earlier, the cocaine sold on Harlem streets was supplied to Bumpy by the Italians. He used to distribute all the cocaine on the streets of Harlem, but after Bumpy's death, this whole system got messed up. The routes used to supply cocaine were now being watched by the police because now even they wanted their own cut in this business. And that's why the price of 1 kilo of cocaine reached up to $0, 0 cents. Frank understood this very well. that now the Italians had completely captured both the cocaine and the police. And at these prices, only they could earn profits. Although there was another way to take and sell cocaine, and that was to buy confiscated cocaine from the police, but even that was very expensive. And because he hated the police, as they hadn't yet caught his brother's killers, that's why he decided not to work with the police. Frank's mind now revolved around one thing, day and night, that now he must arrange cocaine at the right price so that he could earn good money selling it. And for this, he rents a hotel room, gets the phone removed from the room, and completely cuts off contact with the outside world. He does this so he can sit alone in that room and think about what to do next and how to bring cocaine to America. Now, he wanted to destroy the Italians' monopoly at any cost and become an extremely rich man. And then, 3 thoughts come to his mind. The first was that, at that time, some TV shows used to air which showed American soldiers in Vietnam who had become addicted to cocaine. The second was that a military man whom Frank knew once told Frank that pure and top-quality cocaine is found in Vietnam, which is many times better than the diluted cocaine sold in Harlem. The third was that Frank had a relative in Vietnam who was a former U.S. Army sergeant. His name was Leslie Atkinson. In the movie, he's shown as Frank's cousin, while in reality, he was the husband of Frank's cousin's sister. Anyway, after thinking about all these points very carefully, Frank starts to feel that he must buy this pure cocaine directly. And that's why, using Leslie's military connections, he sets off for Vietnam. Because Leslie had very good connections with every black man in the army, Frank and Leslie take a few army soldiers with them and head into the jungle. After wandering in the jungle for several weeks, they finally find a manufacturer. Because Leslie had been living in Vietnam for quite some time, he had learned to speak and understand Vietnamese very well. And he was the one who handled all the negotiations with the cocaine manufacturer with whom the deal was being made. From this manufacturer, Frank purchased around 134 kilos of pure cocaine, which he got at the rate of $4,200.00 per kilo, while even low-quality cocaine in Harlem was selling for $500.00 per kilo. Although, according to the American gangster movie, Frank and Leslie got this cocaine very easily, the reality is completely different. Because while they were wandering in the jungles of Vietnam searching for the manufacturer, local criminals attacked them several times, resulting in multiple shootouts and scuffles. Apart from these troubles, Frank also fell seriously ill and got caught in fever multiple times, which made him quite weak. Anyway, after enduring so many hardships, they managed to arrange the drugs. Then Leslie contacts his carpenter friend and asks him to make 28 coffins, exactly like the government ones. After the coffins were ready and Leslie saw them, he was shocked because they were made exactly the way he wanted. Along with this, secret compartments were also created underneath the coffins, where the drugs could be hidden and transported. After this job was done, Frank and Leslie also bribed an army general with $100,000.00 so that their coffins wouldn't be checked when leaving the jungle. Then, via the sea route, all this cocaine was smuggled into America. After reaching New York, the cocaine was taken out of the coffins and delivered to different Harlem locations like garages, laundries, and other places which were controlled by Frank's cousin, brother. Now Frank had removed the middlemen, like the Italians and the police, from the drug business, and now he started selling very high-quality cocaine and heroin directly in Harlem. This cocaine was diluted only 10 to 15%, and then he would sell it at the rate of $42,000.00 per kilo, which was 10 times higher than what he had paid. And in this way, Harlem's people began to get pure cocaine at much cheaper prices. This proved to be a turning point in Frank's life, and now he started earning up to $1 million.00 per day. After this, he got involved in money laundering and several legal businesses, because all of Frank's legal businesses were growing rapidly. Then he decided that he would organize all his businesses using the same style as the Italian mafia. This method was also quite similar to Pablo Escobar's style. and that's why he started calling his close relatives from North Carolina to New York. These were people Frank could blindly trust, and through them, he began organizing all his legal businesses. Although the scene shown in the movie, in which Frank shoots Tango in the head, that really happened. It happened in 1966, when Bumpy Johnson was still alive. This was back when Frank was neither a smuggler nor working for Bumpy Johnson. And the reason for this murder was that Tango had taken $5,000, 0 cents, from Frank and wasn't returning it. Frank started to feel that if he didn't get his money back, his reputation would be ruined, and that wouldn't be good for his business. That's why, in broad daylight and in front of everyone, he fired 4 bullets into Tango's head. The movie shows Frank Lucas as someone living a very simple life, but that's absolutely not true, because he had a Rolls-Royce, a Mercedes, and a few sports cars too. He only wore normal clothes and roamed around in an average car when he wanted to find out what was going on in Harlem's streets. For that, he used to change his disguise and move around in the car. In the movie, Frank is shown living a simple life, only because, compared to other drug dealers, he was much smarter and more composed. For example, in the American gangster movie, The New Gang, the drug dealer, that he got a full photo shoot done just to give an interview to the New York Times. The headline was, "This is Nicky Barnes," and he was called the biggest drug dealer of Harlem. But can they prove that? Which clearly shows that he had a habit of showing off, whereas Frank was completely different. Anyway, after the movie released, Nicky Barnes said that the truth about him was twisted and manipulated, and that whatever drugs he ever sold, he sold them only by getting them from Italians. About one scene in the movie, he also said that Frank yells at him and calls his drugs blue magic, whereas in reality, nothing like that ever happened. In this whole movie, things were shown in such a different way that many big people turned against it and started pointing fingers. They all said the same thing, that this movie is completely different from the truth. The biggest loss from this was that the American Gangster movie had to let go of all its Oscar nominations. Also, federal judge Sterling Johnson said that the role Denzel Washington played as Frank Lucas is completely different from the real Frank Lucas. According to him, Frank in reality was a short-tempered and dangerous man, and the brains behind running his whole business was Les Atkinson, who was the husband of his cousin's sister. Although the reputation of this federal judge was not very good either, because of which his words were not taken too seriously. And according to him, the mastermind of Frank's business was Leslie, while after Frank's arrest, $500,000, 0 cents, were seized from his house. Now, the biggest question is, what exactly did Frank do with all this money he earned? The answer is that he started getting different drug dealers to work for him. And he started getting different drug dealers to work for him so they could operate under him, although this was also shown in the movie. But after the movie released, many drug dealers filed lawsuits against Universal Pictures, claiming that whatever was shown about them in the movie is false and defaming. However, all of them later withdrew their cases because they understood that if this case was thoroughly investigated, their own crimes and names of many corrupt police officers would come to light, so it was better to stay silent. This brought forward a new angle, that without someone's support, building such a huge illegal empire was impossible, and that support came from none other than the corrupt police. That was the time when the Special Investigation Department was considered the most corrupt department, and by the year 1977, 52 out of 70 officers were removed for being involved in corruption. According to the American gangster movie, the downfall of Frank's illegal business empire began from a boxing match, where he showed up wearing a $0, 0 cents fur coat. And from there, the police figured out who was behind the drug smuggling and other illegal crimes in Harlem after Bumpy Johnson's death. Although that fur coat was not $0, 0 cents, in reality it cost $1,300, 0 cents. And the other most important thing was that many people and several police officers already knew about Frank. because it wasn't possible to bribe every single cop. Frank looked like a king in that fur coat, and his grand entry made everyone's eyes fix on him, because of which people started talking about him, and he became the attraction of that whole event. During the boxing match, Frank sat in the front row, while Italian mafia members like Frank Sinatra, Dustin Hoffman, and Barbra Streisand were sitting in the rows behind him. Frank looked like a superstar in that entire event, in front of whom even the underworld and mafia big shots looked pale. And things went over the top when, before the match, the two legendary boxers, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier themselves, met Frank. It was a huge moment, and this deeply bothered the Italian mafia and white police officers. How could a black man become this powerful? And from here began the fall of Frank's entire criminal empire. Now the police started collecting evidence against Frank, but it wasn't as easy as shown in the movie, because arresting Frank would harm many high-ranking officers. Anyway, 4 years after the boxing match, the police first arrested Frank's cousin, and then finally reached Frank. According to the movie, Frank was arrested from a church, but the truth was entirely different. Frank and his wife were arrested during a raid at their home, and this happened while Frank's wife was throwing a suitcase full of money out from the bathroom. There was another interesting detail about Frank's arrest, that during the arrest, $584,000 was recovered from him, which the police seized, whereas Frank himself said that he had over $1 million in cash at his house. To confirm this, a polygraph test was conducted on Frank, which proved that everything Frank was saying was true. And to this day, no one knows where the remaining $9,500,000 went. Anyway, during the court trial, Frank was sentenced to 70 years in prison, but at the same time the court also said that if he helped catch other drug dealers and corrupt officers, his sentence would be reduced. Now Frank began naming one by one all the people involved in drug smuggling and corrupt officers. And because of this cooperation, his sentence was reduced from 70 years to just 5 years. And he was released in 1981. However, just 3 years after being released in 1984, he was arrested again, and once again for the same crimes he used to commit earlier. This time, it seemed he would be given a life sentence, but that didn't happen. Because Richie Roberts, the lawyer who had fought Frank's case earlier, as soon as he heard that Frank had been arrested again, he contacted Frank again and started fighting his case once more. Since Richie Roberts was an experienced lawyer, he saved Frank from a life sentence again, and this time he was sentenced to just 7 years, which in itself was a miracle. While serving his sentence in jail, Frank Lucas began reflecting on his life. Or you could say, after going to jail for the second time, his life took a new direction. After being released from jail, in one of his interviews he said that now he has left all this behind and no one should ever walk this path, because this path only leads to darkness, suffering, and death. He also said that whatever you do in life, make sure no one is harmed by it, and always live a peaceful and free life. Because when he went to jail, he was very rich, but when he returned, he was completely broken. Frank said his biggest regret was that he couldn't witness his children's childhood. And in the last few years of his life, he had to spend his time in a wheelchair because his legs were broken in a car accident. On May 30th, 2019, Frank bid farewell to this world at the age of 88, and his name was permanently written in the history of America's most dangerous smugglers.